Hey, everybody. Very, very, very sorry about that. We had some technical difficulties. My computer decided it wanted to restart just as we were about to go on. Today is April 6th. We have a relatively small show for you today. Let's check out, I generally like to see who's in the room. And, all right. As you can see, it's just me and Kosh today. Salverson is out. What is he? He's hiking the Appalachian Trail, hopefully hearing somebody whispering how pretty his mouth is. Phil is off doing some kind of Phil things. Where's Rogers?
I don't know. I talked to him the other day. I'm not really sure.
Saving the world.
I think he's probably at a ball game with his kids, if I had to guess.
Oh, putting the kids in front of this? What kind of man is he?
And, a family man.
A family man.
I like us.
My little savages are already asleep, and your savages moved out somewhere, right?
Yeah, they're probably at a bar someplace.
Yes, exactly. Banjo music is playing. Bob's got a full scruffy beard.
Yeah.
I am slowly returning back to life. I don't know where George Beatty is. He might be at a denim convention. Don't know. We are trying to get Chris Naff on tonight, who has a very interesting run. They had a 250-gallon propane tank not only buried in the ground, but buried under concrete. So this tank started leaking, and they had to first get through the concrete to get to the tank. Interesting run, a couple of interesting pictures out there. Jared says, I believe Delaware County is on standby for Madison County for an incident. So that may be where Rogers is. That is quite possible. I don't know. What did you guys end up having? What do they have as a standby for the incident? Anybody know? Kosh, you still there? Your screen's frozen on my end.
I have no idea. Nope, I'm there.
All right. Very good. Well, I don't have anything much to add for myself this week. I was recovering from influenza B, and I am just starting to get my feeling back where I can actually move around and do some stuff. Not a whole hell of a lot happened in the Hazmat world this week. A couple things overseas, right? We know that Syria started bombing with more sarin. That seems to be their liquid of choice.
Allegedly.
Sorry. Allegedly. I'm sure nobody's gonna, take us to court for allegedly. But I guess if we are spreading news, then we should do it the proper way. Yes, allegedly. Syria is out dropping sarin bombs on its people again. We watch the sarin attacks. I've watched them over and over and over again, the ones that were released by the Pentagon a couple of years ago. Not because I enjoy seeing people twitching, especially children, but we show them. It is a very good learning experience for our probies. In my department, all our probies take the IAFF FRO class, and we will show them the video because, for the longest time you hear sludgeum, and the first one S is the seizures. And I always kind of thought it was going to be like a grand mal seizure. EMS runs, you see people seizing, you're like, oh yeah, I could identify that. And it is really nothing like a grand mal seizure, maybe a petite mal seizure, but it is something that everybody should go and take a look at the Syria videos and take a look to see. What's interesting about them is that you can see how many people have had various levels of exposure. You can see the people that are just there and they're having difficulty breathing, all the way down to the ones that are foaming at the mouth and they're locked up. You can almost see the muscles twitching under the skin. It's pretty bad. Yes, Derek, they have a history of chlorine bombs as well. That they do, and they're dropping them from the sky. They're killing tons of people. I have no idea, what the hell's going to happen as far as us. military wise. Not that it's not much of our concern from a first responder world, but we are definitely concerned about us from a first responder world. I don't know if this stuff is ever going to end up making its way here. I don't know if we start to get an involvement, if they're going to start trying to get that kind of stuff released over here, but it should be something that's definitely in the back of our minds. What do you think, Bob?
No, absolutely, absolutely. And just a little quick history lesson for those out there. It was first synthesized in 1938, and this is kind of a weird way how it got its name, sarin. It was named after a scientist whose names were Schrader, Ambrose. Sounds like somebody we know, just missing an E. Ritter and Vanderlyn. So that's kind of just useless trivia if you're ever on Jeopardy. But those of us that have messed with the different train elements around the country and have experienced different things, in the beginning when this first came to light and the whole WMD stuff after 2001, everybody was like, we need to go level A all the way and wear this stuff. And, if we're going to be doing decon, we need to be in the full garb. And what I found striking is watching what was happening in Syria. These people literally had nothing more than cheesecloth over their nose and mouth, and just a gross emergency decon using a garden hose on these kids and whatnot, which, anybody that does anything to this magnitude is just crazy anyway, let alone to do something to kids. But it just goes to show you that even with minimum PPE, you can do some basic stuff to do a quick gross decon, and we don't have to throw out the pools and the tents and all this crazy stuff that people talk about. Literally these people had cheesecloth on their face and a garden hose for decon.
Right.
So with that, what type of air monitoring are people going to be looking at right off the bat? Or are you even going to be thinking about, there's a lot of other people that think about, hey, well, if they're dropping this as a bomb, some of the discussion is when that explosion happens, doesn't that burn up some of the chemical?
I was under the impression, and I know we have, although we can't seem to get anybody on, we've tried multiple people. I know our resident expert on G agents is floating in the room. Bob, if you can answer some of these questions via the message boards. And he says yes. All right. So I was under the impression that these missiles, these bombs, they attempted to aerosolize them as absolutely much as possible and avoid, explosives like a big boom because it did that. Are there other ways that you can disseminate this material effectively over a crowd? Anybody want to go with that? I know, just so you guys know, I know that we're on about a 5 to 10 second delay with the questions in the message board. So it's going to take a few seconds for a few people to pop through. And if anyone has anything to add on to how to disseminate this stuff or what types of things would work or wouldn't work that we would see out in the field, that would be some great information to share as well. I'm not an expert on the nerve agents. Like I said, until I saw this video, I didn't even know what it looked like. G agents decompose fast. Air spraying is the only chance. Okay, so Bob, when they are releasing these into the air, then these missiles are really spraying the nerve agent. Is this basically what?
What the footage I saw was they actually dropped what looked like explosive devices that blew up. And, normally when you see something like that, you also see a minor fireball of some sort, and there wasn't. Although there was a big dust cloud from when it impacted whatever structures or roadways, what have you. But I didn't see the typical after effect that you would see from a normal explosions. So it might be just something that once it dropped and exploded, dispersed, in some form.
So there's an impact G agent, usually spray. V agents and mustards are usually different. Okay, so if we have a G agent as a spray, how are the V agents and the mustards different? And if I were to, for those of you that don't know, Bob Stern did a tremendous amount of work in the uh, chemical warfare industry world, in the Department of Defense and things like those lines. So he is a relative. He's the closest that we have to an expert on this. So if we are veering the questions towards him, he has been vetted, and I feel comfortable with his answers. Not that my opinion really means anything, but if we were to see this in our world, nobody's coming over here with a missile and firing missiles. I don't think that that's something that's going to be plausible. What would be the method of dissemination that would actually work? What would be something that we would come across and actually see? Is this going to be something that's really crude, like the sarin attacks in Tokyo? Or are we going to be looking at something complicated like pump sprayers, or somebody going to be dropping these from airplane like a duster or a pesticide sprayer would out in some bum F place like where Rogers lives? All right, so
Exactly.
V and H agents don't compensate. All right, so if we've got a crop duster, yes, Derek, crop duster, that was what I was thinking of. So how are we going to see this in our world? That's really what concerns me. All right, they're doing this in other parts of the world in military. The people that are going to release them here, they're not going to be doing it in military fashion. So what options do they have to try to release this in a way that is going to work? If I was in New York City and try to do something, I probably only have one shot to do this. So what am I going to do that has actually going to have some impact? So, all right, Derek, release in a enclosed environment like the Tokyo City subway and get it to spread via currents. Well, they didn't do a very good job of releasing it through the currents that way because the vapors, it didn't off gas enough. And in fact, if you see the pictures of the sarin attacks, there are literally people standing there with absolutely nothing right over the puddle. And they're not affected in any way, shape, or form. So I was under the impression, hey, Chris, can you hear me? We have somebody coming on, Chris Naff from Florida. Hopefully he can hear me. Can you hear me, Chris? All right. Can you hear me?
How about now?
I can hear you. Can
Perfect.
you hear me?
Yep.
All right.
Good.
All right, great. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, they did that in the Tokyo. How could they have done it better? What kinds of things would they have done differently if they could? I think the whole idea behind the spray and the mist, and Bob Stern can correct me if I'm wrong, and if Christina Baxter's eventually sees this, maybe she can get a hold of me, is that the particles actually land on people, which is, they lands on them or they somehow touch it after it has landed on something else. So we'll see. Okay, so Bob says that they didn't do a very good job because they were only able to make it 35% pure. So Bob, if they didn't make it 35% pure, if they had weapons grade stuff, would that have made a difference? Would those people standing around the puddle taking a picture have ended up getting affected? And while we wait for that answer to come through, I would like to introduce Chris Naff. How you doing, Chris?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good. So we're trying to do this a little bit more. We've had some technical difficulties trying to get people like Bob Stern on to talk about stuff. So we're trying something different, and this actually ended up working. You saw him come in as me. I gave him a presenter's link, and he came on. So you had a very interesting run that dealt with propane, yes?
Yes, it actually happened probably about a year ago. So it's not new, but like I said, it's about a year old.
Okay. All right. So why don't you give some background on who you are and what you're doing?
All right. So my name is St. Johns County Fire Rescue, which, if anybody's familiar with the area, it's just south of Jacksonville, Florida, northeast of where Bob's at. I've been working there for about 13 years, been about 13 years on the hazmat team there. And I'm just a firefighter, just ride backwards, having fun.
Nice.
So it's a good responsibility being in the back. I like it. So this call was actually in the city of St. Augustine, which is the city that we encompass, which is the nation's oldest city. Their team is actually part of our team, so we're basically one team together. So we go as far as hazmat's concerned. So we run a lot of calls with them. This came out as just a odor of gas leak. A company was actually cutting up the parking lot area and putting a new parking lot down, and ran across this tank that had been put in God knows when. Could have been 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Who knows? So they ran across it. They actually were trying to pick it up with a front end loader, the front part of it that was covering the valves. Obviously, that when they started smelling gas, they stopped, called us. We got there, found the valve assembly. As if anybody's familiar with the hazmat group 2, all the pictures are on there, so it's kind of hard to explain. But they basically concreted over a 50% full 250-gallon tank. It might have been 500. I can't remember. It was a year ago. So still product in it, was actively leaking through the threads on the old style valve assemblies. So where the fill valve and all the stuff. So it has no liquid evac line. So,
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about? There's no liquid evac line on. So basically the only thing that was uncovered was the pressure relief device. So we got
for
there.
Those of you,
go ahead.
For those of you who are listening that aren't quite sure what exactly he's talking about, when you have a full 250 tank underground, you're going to have a shaped tank that's kind of like this. And he's talking about the liquid line. Quite often there is a dip tube that goes all the way down almost to the bottom of that tank that has a little valve sticking up above the tank. And if that were to get sheared, if it had a liquid line and that were to get sheared, the pressure of the vapor would push down on that liquid, sending the liquid up the dip tube, up the fill tube, and out the part that was sheared. And what he's saying is that this tank was old enough that it didn't have, or for whatever reason, they were never taking liquid out, so it didn't have a liquid line. So the only thing that they were concerned about were the vapors coming off of the actual. Correct?
Correct. So basically the decision was, how do we get this piece of concrete off so we can burn the rest of this tank off so the gas company could get it out of the ground and remove it? So we kicked around a bunch of ideas. We're firemen. We're like, well, we'll just hit it with a sledgehammer. Well, that's not going to work, obviously. There's come up with. So we settled with an air chisel out, and just started slowly chipping it away. So where it was leaking was actually from the threads of the valve tank. So if we would have hit it the wrong direction or at the wrong time and sheared it off, we would have had a little bit of a problem. But luckily we did it. Yeah. So basically we just chipped away at it for probably about 10 or 15 minutes, and finally it broke loose and we could get to the valves. We couldn't get to the actual fill valve, but we actually got to the side of the valve, and then just burned off the rest of the vapor out of that. It took about maybe 40 minutes or something like that through our flare, through the Red Dragon.
Okay. So and now what you guys ended up going through the side of the fill and then just ended up flaring. Now without access to the liquid line, you just flared.
Correct. We just did the vapor.
Okay. Did you notice any kind of auto refrigeration to be an issue? I know you guys are in Florida and the ground is probably piping hot. It never 30 degrees from hell.
Yeah. Yeah, that's basically it. Any problems with it. So that even if it auto refrigerated, that would have been a godsend too, because we could have took the valve out and switched it out with a new one and been done. Hopefully put some seal tape on it, some gas tape on it, and put a new valve in. So, but yeah, it turned out to be pretty good. It was an interesting call for sure.
All right. Excellent. Any lessons learned Anything that you guys, would have done better, or turned around and later on went, oh, wow, if we had done this, it probably would have worked better? Or do you feel like everybody did 100%?
Yeah, I think we did what we had to do. I wouldn't change anything. I mean, it was the only way to get that concrete off that we could think of. I mean, you don't want to take like a light USAR hammer or light chipping hammer to it, because even that creates too much pressure. You're trying to, like, how are you going to get concrete off of a valve that's leaking? But not something you do every day.
Now, did you guys do air monitoring while you were around there?
Yeah,
it looked like you had a hose line.
We had two hose lines, actually. We had the hose line that was up right next to in the picture. There's me and three other guys. They were from the St. Augustine City Fire Department. And then we had some more guys on a RIT team that were on a backup line. So they were keeping the guys that were with us with the hose line were spraying water on the concrete just in case we hit some rebar or something. I didn't want any sparks, so I was being extra careful. And then we had some people on the perimeters doing some air monitoring stuff. So, I mean, we knew when we went up there with the air monitor that it would go off because we knew it was leaking.
Right.
Was there any kind of backup plan in case that valve sheared off?
Not really, to be honest with you.
Okay, fair enough.
We were just going with it.
All right.
I mean, that basically we were thinking if that thing popped off, it was going to auto refrigerate itself eventually, and we had the backup hose lines and stuff like that. So, we really didn't have a solid backup plan. We were just hoping for the best on that one.
Hoping that plan A was the only A that you needed.
Yeah, exactly. Because we couldn't leave it there because it was leaking. So it's kind of one of those. What do you do? So, yeah, it's definitely an interesting call.
All right, now with an underground tank, the reason I brought up auto refrigeration is because these big tanks is not something that we deal with a lot in New York City. So my experience with them is extremely limited. But we do deal with the small propane tanks a lot. And one of the ways that we pretty much know the propane tank is empty when the flare stops, instead of auto refrigerated itself shut, is to literally go over to the tank and either shake it or give it away. On these large tanks, if that flame goes out, how do you end up being sure that it's empty and not just auto refrigerated?
Well, if you can see the actual gauge that's on top of the tank, usually it's in that same cluster. And one of the pictures, you can actually see the gauge. So if it still says 20% full, chances are you've just auto refrigerated the tank.
Okay.
Another thing you can do is if you have access to the actual fill valve itself, if there's no pressure and the tank's completely empty, you can push your finger down and push that valve down, and no gas will come out, or a very little amount of gas will come out. Now, if you've auto refrigerated the tank and you go to pop that valve, or you try to push that thing, the fill valve down, and it doesn't push down, then it's still got a bunch of pressure on it, or it doesn't have. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Like it's.
Yeah, there's still stuff behind it.
Right. Your best bet's going to be the gauge, though. Okay.
All right. And
do you guys try to fill them up inject water into them at all, or anything like that?
We've talked about doing that. Jacksonville does that a lot. They do a lot of water injection. We're just starting to get into that a little bit, trying to get those guys to come down and show us, the ins and the outs of that. So they do it a lot. So they'll take it and actually put water into the tank and float the liquid propane up and flush it out, basically filling the tank with water.
And what is the advantage to that?
Well, with the propane, I'm not sure the exact number, but it's significantly lighter than water. It's like 2.4 pounds, I believe. So 4.2 pounds. My dyslexia is kicking in, but or it's the Jameson, one of the two. So the liquid propane actually floats to the top of the water. So if you, like in this case, if we could have water injected this, we could have filled it with water. All the liquid propane would have came up to the top. We could have burned liquid instead of vapor and been done quicker. Or if you have a smaller leak, on a bobtail truck or a trailer like that, you can actually fill it up and just have a liquid leak of water instead of liquid propane, and then you can go about fixing your leak.
Excellent. All right, good stuff. And yes, we have one comment in the audience that you could have used a freeze patch without a doubt. Have you ever used a freeze patch on a propane?
I'm guessing what he's talking about is just taking a wet rag and putting it over some leaking valves and stuff like that. If that's what he's talking about, yeah. Is that from Rob?
Yeah, from Rob.
Yeah. If the valve broke off, you could.
Yeah, this.
Yeah,
actually, it is pretty impressive how well the freeze patch works. Just keep in mind it is a temporary measure because the freeze patch is based upon auto refrigeration. And once you no longer have auto refrigeration because of the freeze patch starts to melt. So don't just do it thinking that it is something that you're going to be able to walk away from. It will start leaking, pretty soon after.
Right. And during Hurricane Matthew, we had a ton of propane tanks that were actually unearthed from the coastline. It wasn't no big deal for us to go up to where we probably turned off 20, 25 tanks, at least each USAR team, that were just frozen over from just auto refrigerating and freezing over. So
very cool. Yeah, a lot of good stuff out there, a lot of techniques. The water injection is something that is making its way around, and I definitely recommend if you guys have lots of propane cylinders to seek out these people that are experts on the water injection and get yourself trained and up to speed on it, because it is a fantastic option to go with. Anybody else?
The gas companies, the gas companies have definitely let us do a lot of stuff, and it definitely, like Mike was saying, get with your local gas company, because they'll even give you different types of patches or leak control devices, to get things started before they get there. They're a great resource.
Yeah, it's your product to be the one to level somebody's house.
Yeah, and they're pretty. Once you get a good rapport with them, they'll be able to give you all the fittings and anything you need. And we actually have that same company, AmeriGas, that was on that call. They stockpile old tanks for us, so we can go out there and burn off tanks all day long and practice doing stuff if we want to. And they have no problems with any of it. So if you ever need the fittings, or 2 different liquid evac fittings, so you can get it from them and make your own stabs and all that kind of stuff for them.
Very
awesome.
Cool.
Well, thanks, Chris, for the insight. We appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. And we're all kind of hazmat geeks, the 15 of us that are in this room. But if you happen to come across this video at some other point in time, Chris mentioned a Hazmat 2 group. He's referring to the Hazmat 2 group on Facebook. And the pictures are absolutely up there. They are fantastic photos. Very interesting to see a cemented over propane tank and how they came across getting to the valves and all the things that they did. So if you want to join the group, take a look at those pictures and use that group to share your experiences, because this is how we all learn. Chris, thank you very much for your time.
Yep, no problem.
Thanks, bro. I just got to mention something. Do you know we're going 80 miles an hour right now?
What do you mean?
We are literally going 80 miles an hour towards DC and being watched by one of our cohorts, Derek. From Orlando, while he's taking the Edgewater High School band to DC. They are watching and listening to us. So, Derek, thanks. And I think you're not driving and watching, I hope.
Those poor kids.
Right. Well, I think he's trying to put them to sleep.
Well, then he chose a good thing. Each one of my kids have their own Kindle, and they watch the show to go to bed. So it is good. This was great. This happened to work relatively well, this method of bringing people on. So hopefully we can do that again. I would like to have Bob Stern on and do this. He has a tremendous amount of knowledge when it comes to not just ChemPro, but the sarin and the G agents. He has some very good stuff that I know he is absolutely dying to share. So hopefully we can do this again. We can get some more information, because I would definitely love to know how we're going to actually come across this stuff in the field. What's going to keep us safe, not with the stuff that's, necessarily made in a laboratory somewhere, but the stuff that some creep like me is going to make in his basement.
Right. Exactly. All right.
Well,
I think that about wraps it up.
I think it should. Thank you for joining us on this. Out by me, it's a rainy April 6th, and by Bob, it's a sunny, go screw yourself 80-degree day. And for those that are listening, I'm sure it's somewhere in the middle.
It's going to get down to 50 tonight. It's getting down to 50 tonight.
Oh, you poor thing! You got your feety pajamas?
No, I'm still in. I can't show you, but I'm still in shorts.
I'm naked below the shirt, so I won't stand up. All right, everybody.
Oversharing. Anyway,
on that note, everybody have a fantastic week. Bob, where can they get a hold of you if they so would like?
Just a quick reminder, FDIC in just a couple of weeks, myself, Phil Ambrose, and Jason Rogers will be there. Phil's going to be teaching a class talking about the gray area where rescue meets hazmat, and we're going to be doing all kinds of crazy stuff. You can get me at hcmtlt@gmail.com and at Twitter, or at bobkosh@hazsim.com. Thanks again for everybody for watching, and be safe till next week.
If you're going to one of these FDICs, definitely check out Phil's Gray Zone, where the hazmat meets the rescue. It will make you sit and think and give you ways. Not just us, like we're the ones. If he's talking to us, he's preaching to the choir. But when you are in your departments and you're talking to people and you're trying to get them to understand that hazmat is really no different than a fire situation, he gives some really great pointers and some really great ideas. So definitely check it out. You can even, I think he's got them floating around the internet. Just look up the Gray Zone. Very, very good stuff. As far as me, I won't be at FDIC, but I will be in Baltimore, as well as my co-host, Bob Salverson, who is currently hiking the Appalachian Trail, which is creepy in and of itself. But, hey, what are you going to do? It's Bob. Guys, have a great night. If you have any questions, you can always email me at mike@thehazmatguys.com. Come to us with any of your runs, informations. We'd love to get it audio archived and out there so everybody can learn. All right. Sweet dreams, everybody.
Be safe.